starting off this webinar, thank you. First of all, thank you everyone for joining in, and we are delighted to have you all for this webinar on Saturday morning. So today I'll be your host, Abhirup. So I'm the co-founder of Oren, and from my background point of view, I have done MBA and post that I have been working in this field of sustainability to help out companies in India to ease their sustainability reporting. So that is what my background has been. So along with me, our guest speaker, Mr. Vivek, he is also there. So he's a certified BRSR professional, and by qualification, he's a chartered accountant himself. So his experience also dwells for the sustainability front, and he has been consulting companies on the sustainability aspect for the last few years through his personal as well as corporate.
Namaskar. Good morning, everyone.
So yeah, just continuing this engagement. So today's structure for the webinar would be like, first of all, we'll cover up the overall structure of BRSR, how things have matured in the ESG space when we compare the ESG landscape in India. Post that, we'll also cover up the questions that we have been gathering since long. So like we have been talking to few people and companies where we gathered few questions which are like general one. So to answer those questions which were already there in the webinar link, and post that we'll also cover up the questions that we received from all of you. While we are registering, you have shared few questions that you wanted the answer for. So we'll also cover up those things. And in between, if you feel that there is any question or any doubt that you come across, so feel free to put that on the chat. So we'll be taking those questions in the end of the webinar, and then we can answer each and every questions. And if there is any other need, we can definitely connect on a one-to-one basis later on. So with that, I welcome you all for the webinar, first of all, and I'll then start with the first step, that what is it and why ESG or environmental, social and governance aspect is important for any business as of today. So what is the actual need of ESG? So to that, I'll just like to give you a larger overview that where ESG stands today and why it is important for any business who is in the market as of now. So today, as we look at it, like every business would like to improve their top line as well as bottom lines, and at the same time they are trying to grow as fast as possible, right? We are in a space where growth is the only driver for any business. So for achieving those growths right now, as we look at it from our different stakeholders point of view, so things are changing, because from investors point of view, earlier it was more from the returns point of view that they were looking at, then it became return and risk. So right now, when we talk about the investors look out from return and risk point of view while they are investing, so that is where ESG framework comes into picture. So ESG is nothing but a framework which helps any business to tackle those risks which comes from all the ancillary things, like climate risk is one of them. But other than that, anything which comes under social and governance aspect, that also comes into picture. So I'll take them as use cases or examples going forward. So right now, as we talk about the different stakeholders, first of all is consumers or customers for us. So like as we know that more and more millennials are very much vocal, and they want to see the future around their perspective. So that is why like Gen Z is moving this drive towards ESG adoption. So they are the findings say that the market research says that any company who is doing good in the ESG front or environmental footprint or social footprint, so it is more likely that Gen Z will be interacting with those brands or those consumers. Secondly, from the investors angle, as more and more scrutiny comes into picture, investors are also onboarded with the ESG factors. So bring down their risk factors there. Third thing, from the employees point of view, right now I believe all of you would have experienced that from the work from home culture that we have adopted after COVID lockdowns, that more and more people, earlier they were talking about the overall pay structure and how much is the new job paying us, to a shift in the what is the culture in the company where we'll be joining in. So nowadays it is more oriented towards the culture of the organization than actually the remuneration or any other tangible benefits that the employees get in. So that is where like Gen Z again comes into picture. They are looking forward to companies who demonstrate strong corporate sustainable social responsibility or environmental responsibilities, and that is where we see that more and more companies evolve in the like sustainable by nature front. Then there comes in the regulators and banks or financial instruments. So regulators, by that what I mean is SEBI. So SEBI came up with this BRSR guideline last year, which mandates the top 1,000 listed companies to adopt this practice, and they will have to mandatorily report all these things as per BRSR requirements from this coming financial year. And similar trends have been there in the banking front. So banks have now started modeling their own frameworks for ESG evaluation while they are taking some investment decisions from their side. So as and when we move forward, this ESG space is going to converge from all these stakeholders, and they will be looking at more and more better transparent and better governed companies to look at. So from employee engagement to consumer centric mindset. So that is where like the ESG is rising as a corporate agenda and is a boardroom topic for each and every company, not only listed, even unlisted companies are doing that. So now talking about BRSR. BRSR as a framework, it's a very well built and a hybrid framework that SEBI has come up with. So it is kind of a hybrid structure which incorporates things from GRI, which is like the globally accepted and most prominent framework for ESG reporting. So it has features from GRI. Secondly, it covers the overall landscape of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which on a country level even we are tracking, and Niti Aayog comes up with their rating of ESDGs for every state every year. Apart from that, it is incorporating the United Nations guiding principles, and the entire base of ESG reporting or the BRSR reporting is based on the NGR principles which are released in 2019. So this is like a hybrid structure which incorporates both global frameworks as well as a nationwide framework, and it is a very detailed, very well built framework that SEBI has come up with. So now talking about the entire evolution of ESG. So I'll like to tell you about first the structure of BRSR, how it is different from the companies who are already reporting BRR earlier, and what are the changes here that we have seen. So from a BRSR lookout point of view, so earlier BRR had 5 sections which talked about the 9 NGRPC principles, but now with the BRSR it has been reduced down to 3, where first section is all about general disclosures about the company and the operations, the kind of products that we have from our company's point of view. So all these things will be in the general disclosure part. Second one would be a overview of all the principles, that do you have any policies covering all these principles, what is the training and adoption in the company, how are we tackling it, what are the goals that we have set, and how we are meeting those goals. So it is kind of a general overview of all these principles. And then in the section 3, which is a principle wise disclosure, that is where we go deep down into each and every principle. There are different parameters which are already being notified, and those are clubbed together into 2 type of indicators. One is essential, another one is leadership. So right now essential indicators are like the basic functions that every company will have to fulfill. So those questions will have to be answered by everyone. And leadership indicators are voluntary right now. So any company who wants to do it from their end, whoever have the data and they want to be in the top quadrant of their sector, for them leadership indicators are really handy, and that has already been laid down by SEBI. So this is the overall structure. Now from the changes point of view, the major change that comes from BRR to BRSR is about the incorporation of materiality topics. So when I talk about materiality topics, it is nothing but talking about anything which you see as a business or as an industry is going to be impacting your top line or bottom line. So materiality topics, to tell you about that, it has to be an overall convergent communication from the overall reporting of BRSR. So when I identify a materiality topic which is pertaining to a particular product or a service that I as a business is providing, that has to be evaluated on the risk and the opportunities point of view, and then what are the risk mitigation steps that we have taken if there is an opportunity, if there is a business call or business strategy to move towards that opportunity, and tapping that market, and then including the overall mitigation steps along with your CSR initiatives or any other decarbonization strategy for environmental and climate risks. So all these things converge into these materiality topics. So this is one of the major factor which will be the starting point for you. And by a starting point, what do I mean? When you come with your materiality topics, it is not only a management decision. It has to be a collective decision from all your stakeholders. So by that, it has to be started with consultation with all the stakeholders that you have, getting their views on these materiality topics, mapping it as per the business risks, and then getting a long-term and a short-term view on that, so that you align your entire ESG strategy to mitigate those short-term and long-term risks from the company's perspective. So this is the entire shift that we have seen, and it is like the major shift from BRR to BRSR. Second shift would be the quantification efforts. So in BRR, it was more of a ESG metrics that we are covering, and that we are doing more from the qualified, or let's say they're not quantification, that much heavy quantification required earlier. But now with BRSR framework, it has been laid down as a quantification of each and every principle. So we'll have to drill down deeper into a product level or a company unit level to get that data and disclose that on the format. And third major shift is that the flexibility of the reporting. So right now, as I mentioned, that there is flexibility for companies to either go for only the essential indicators or even opt for few leadership indicators or the entire suite for them. But at the same time, SEBI has also come up with one more version called the BRSR lite, which is applicable for the non-listed companies or even the startups who are trying to map their ESG efforts compared to their peers who are listed ones. So that is where like now things are moving. And I'll just like to present the overall evaluation of ESG space in India. So as you can track down the overall BRSR landscape, it started in 2009 when NVGs were released by MCA. So that was the starting point for Indian corporates to adopt these non-financial disclosures or sustainability efforts, which was followed by the BRR reporting. It was first applicable for the top 100 listed companies only by market cap in 2012. Then CSR as a function of the companies got like it was mandatory in 2014. So it was kind of in one more step from the regulators to adopt these non-financial aspects into the reporting framework. In 2015, we saw that the scope of reporting for BRR extended towards the top 500 companies. So in 2014 onwards, companies in the top 500 range, they started reporting this BRR. So they are familiar with the BRR structure as of now. And that also came up as integrated reporting. So companies, SEBI not mandated, they recommended that you can adopt a IR practice for your integrated, for your annual report, which will incorporate all these non-financial and financial disclosures there. And 2019 is when they remodeled the principles, the NVG's principles into NGRBC, which are much focused, much oriented towards the corporate strategy for like the 20th century. And that as a natural extension, the BRR also got modified into BRSR, which now include the top 1,000 companies. So from 500, it has like extended towards the top 1,000 companies, and BRSR is applicable for all the top 1,000 companies for now from the next coming year. So that is how things have evolved. Now, a few things which are happening as of today. So with SEBI's mandate now, they are also coming up with a BRI, which is Business Responsibility Index, which is in under consultation right now. So in the coming years, we'll be able to see that based on all the BRSR principles or the disclosures, they are going to rate all the companies on their sustainability efforts and non-financial reporting. So there will be a BRI index coming on from SEBI. Second thing that has matured right now, again, there is a consultation paper from SEBI, which is asking all the mutual fund companies to only have companies which are reporting BRSR in their portfolios. So it is under discussion right now. So those things are moving from the regulatory framework point of view, and even the banking sector has also been adopting these financial risks for their investment portfolio. So all these things are converging towards more and more disclosure, more and more transparency in the BRSR front. So that is why we are here to answer a few questions which we have got from our interactions with the people in the corporate companies. So that is where we would like to answer the questions which we have collected as of now. And going forward, if you have any questions and if you want us to deep down into anything, so feel free to write down on the chat window. So now I would invite Vivek to answer few questions which we have been trying to answer and which I have collected. So over to you, Vivek, right now.
Yeah, thank you, Abhirup, for the very nice introduction, and again a very warm welcome to all the participants who have spared their time on such a fine Saturday morning. I understand Saturdays are basically more or less on and off days for most of us. It's a time for recap for the whole week and all those things. So thank you for sparing these valuable moments so that we get an opportunity to share our experiences with you. Now, with the introduction that Mr. Abhirup has given, during our process of interaction with the companies since the last few years, there have been some very common questions which we have faced and which we had to address. So we will take up a few of these common questions which we have been encountering. The first is, what is the fundamental difference between CSR and ESG? Basically, what is the fundamental difference? Because companies say we are already allocating our 2% of our average net profits to social activities, to NGOs, all those things. So what is the basic difference? Now, the fundamental difference, if I can recap it properly, is the CSR is concerned with how you put your profits to use, how you use your profits towards the social goals, while ESG is how you earn your profits. It is concerned with the whole process of business operations, not only your bottom line or your top line, but it concerns and encompasses the whole sphere of all your business processes and all your business operations put together. So, in a nutshell, CSR is how you apply your profits, how you use your profits towards social goals, while ESG is how you earn your profits, so to say. And BRSR is just trying to capture the whole process of the thrust of a business on E, S, and G parameters. So this is the basic fundamental difference between CSR and ESG. And if we go through the BRSR or the BRR report in detail, we have questions related to CSR also. So CSR is a part of ESG and not vice versa. It's a subset of ESG basically. Abhirup, can we have the next question, please? Now, another common question, do we need, these questions are raised mostly by the company secretaries and the CFOs that we come across and meet during our practice. Do we need to set up an internal committee for BRSR, or can the CSR committee overlook the BRSR committee? Now, legally, as per the company law, there is no mandate as of now to have a separate board level oversight committee for BRSR. There is a question in the BRSR framework which asks us whether we have a separate committee or we have some other director or some concerned person who has been mandated to look after the BRSR implementation, ESG implementation in a company. So to answer this question, as of now, as the law stands today, we do not have any requirement of a separate internal or a board level committee as of today. But since the ball has been set rolling, the regulators are tightening their hold over the reporting every day and every week. We see a lot of changes. This is our anticipation that someday, very soon, just a matter of time, the requirement of an internal committee to have an oversight over BRSR implementation will happen. This is what we think, and it's just a matter of time. So as a good practice, if a company is in the process of BRSR implementation, they can start looking at a formation of a BRSR committee, which might be maybe it can comprise of one independent director and one executive director, or two independent directors and one executive director, so that there is a proper independence also to show on record and in place for the operational aspects. Avirup, can we have the next question, please? So what should be the composition and chairperson of the BRSR committee? So I already answered that question in the earlier one. If a company is planning to have a board level committee, such as an audit committee, or we have a remuneration committee, or shareholder grievance committee, these are mandatory committees. So if we have a non-mandatory committee as of now, which is in charge of oversight of the BRSR implementation, then the ideal composition would be to have at least 3 directors, an odd number from the governance point of view. And out of those 3, there should be 2 directors who are independent, non-executive directors. And one of them can be an executive director who would be made in charge of the overall day-to-day implementation. And the other 2 independent directors can have an oversight on a periodic basis. So this is what we would suggest and recommend as a composition of the BRSR committee. Again, it is as of now a voluntary committee of the board, but it's always advisable to have things in place before the regulators require them to have them in place. So that's always a good practice as far as governance is concerned. Yeah, so Avirup, can we have the next question? Am I audible properly to everyone?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
sir.
Yeah. So what is the overall policy framework / the topical coverage for BRSR, and how should they be disclosed and where? So as far as the topical policy framework is concerned, we generally see that companies need to have policies and SOPs in place for all sorts of business operations that they have. For example, let us take a typical manufacturing company, an FMCG. So you would be having verticals such as production, HR, customer relations, employees, contract employees, legal, the legal team. So basically, when we say the policy framework, it would be addressing the G aspect, the governance aspect of the E, S, and G3 parameters. So as far as the governance is concerned, there need to be policies in place for all types of business operations and processes. They should be covering each and everything. I mean, if you have a look at any corporate website which is reporting on BRSR as of now, there is also another section which says, I mean, these are our policies which are in place. I mean, and all these policies need to be board level adopted policies. So it has to come down from the highest level and it has to percolate into the lowest bottom levels of an organization. So that is what is basically required. Now, when we say ESG and sustainability, the underlying principle is that the principles and the practices that a company adopts should percolate down the line to each and every stakeholder. That is the essential assumption and implication of ESG implementation. So to have that in letter and in spirit, the board has to frame policies and SOPs, standard operating procedures, which encompasses E, S, and G parameters in all areas of operations of a company, all verticals, everything has to be included. So this is the topical coverage. And so when you say about topics, you don't have 1 or 2 or 3 topics. It has to be all topics and it has to be all areas of operations. Where they have to be disclosed and how. Now, BRSR framework requires disclosure of the board level policies for ESG on the corporate website as of now. And it also has a question in the section C, performance-wise indicators, just before that. Where are these policies related to principle number 1 to 9? Where are they disclosed? So you also have to give links to your external or internal intranet websites and all those things. That has to be given. So you need not narratively describe all these policies in a BRSR framework report, but you can always give links and you can always give URL so that any reader can access that. So that has basically to be a public information in the public domain, and this is to ensure transparency. And transparency is the core element of principle number 1 of the BRSR, of the NGRBCs. So this is where it has to be linked and tied up and disclosed. Can we have the next question, Abhiru? What is the assurance mechanism and requirements for BRSR, or internal/external assurance? Now, to be very honest, let me ask everyone over here a question. When a company reports something, how do we rely on the authenticity of that information? Taking a typical example of a balance sheet and a profit and loss account. Since I am a chartered accountant, I can give you an example offhand of the balance sheet and the profit and loss account. So, would a shareholder or a general reader or public at large rely on the balance sheet and the numbers given by the company's suo motu? We would not. That is why, since time immemorial, the Company Act has mandated that balance sheets have to be audited by external chartered accountants who are independent of the company. And there are various procedures and practices in place to ensure independence of the auditors. Now, having said that, as of now, there is no legal requirement or legal mandate for having a BRSR or any other type of non-financial reporting framework getting audited by internal or external assurance agencies. It is not mandatory as of now. But like everything, whenever a company publishes information in the public domain, it has to be assured, and we anticipate that it is just a matter of time before compulsory assurance will come in as per legal requirements. Because you see, when we have a look at the BRSR framework, there are so many questions. There are almost 165 questions which have to be addressed by a company. The essential indicators, the leadership indicators, the general information. Now, most of this information is linked somewhere or the other to the annual reports that a company prepares, either to the director's report or to the management disclosure statement or to the CSR report that it has to mandatorily publish, or to the risk assessment report that the director's report contains, or even to the notes on financial statements. Everywhere the information is connected with each other. There has to be congruence between what is published in a BRSR report along with the other information which has been provided in the annual statement. And that is exactly why we call this an integrated report. It is an integrated whole. So the external assurance requirements will come in. This is going to be just a matter of time, because you cannot have any published information by a company to be relied upon by external stakeholders suo motu. So, I mean, there has to be some kind of an assurance. And if we have a look, typically the top 40, top 50 companies in India which have been reporting on GRI or on integrated reporting framework since the last few years, they have been carrying out a voluntary external assurance, and they have been publishing that report also. And incidentally, there is one question in the section B, which is the last question, which asks the company whether the implementation of the ESG policies has been externally assured, yes or no. So companies sometimes say yes, companies sometimes say no, based on the factual situation. So that question may be revised and redrafted in the time to come. I hope that answers this question to the satisfaction of everyone. Can we have the next question, Abhiru, please? Yeah. How should training and sensitization / orientation be approached for internal external stakeholders for a BRSR implementation? Now, earlier in one of these questions, I said that the implementation has to become an outlook in the whole company. the BRSR, the ESG practices, they have to become an outlook in the whole company. It is a pan-organizational implementation which has to take place. So sensitization and orientation are very, very highly essential. When a new employee joins a company, he or she is given a brief and training on the practices of a company by the HR department, which is very typical practice. So likewise, over here also, when new policies and practices are sought to be implemented in a company, orientation and sensitization has to be very important, and it has to be made a part of the training process of internal stakeholders, especially the internal stakeholders, and the external stakeholders also wherever applicable. So what would happen is that, see, this is not a process which is a one-time thing. It has to go on. It will take time. It's a matter of time that everyone, all the stakeholders who are involved in a company, in an organization, they get sensitized, they get oriented towards the new practices that are being implemented by a corporate, by a company. So this training program will start from the highest, from the board level, and it will go down to the most lowest level where contract workers are also involved. I mean, these are all the internal stakeholders of a organization. So everyone has to be involved, and that is exactly why I second what Abhirup said in the initial part of the webinar, that identification and engagement of stakeholders is highly essential over here, without which we cannot have materiality assessments done, and without which we cannot have targeted sensitization programs for each and every stakeholder in place. So that is very essential, and it has to take place, and it is a process which has to be undertaken over a period of time. Can we have the next question, please?
So Vivek, we'll take up the questions later. I'll just like to now summarize that what we do. So thank you, Vivek, for answering these questions. So now from the overall perspective, like what we do and how we can help you is that, like, from an Oren perspective, we are a neo consulting firm, which is a combination of digital versus advisory. So that is where we fit into the picture. We want to achieve one thing, that is like ESG solutions should be accessible and adaptable to each and every company, irrespective of their size and their market presence. So that is our motto. And in terms of like the services, these are like the 4 pillars that we cover today, like carbon footprinting, which is more towards the environmental aspect of ESG. That is what we have a separate practice. Like for any company from different industry, there is a different accounting process for carbon footprinting. So we do have that practice to help you with that. Secondly, sustainability reporting. So like BRSR is one framework of sustainability reporting. Similarly, there are many others. So we do help you develop this entire report and then again publish that as a assured report. So the entire process will be done by us along with our partners. Third thing will be the advisory. So this is where our experts and our partners comes into picture. So they will be helping you with the strategy, then setting up the goals, and then even like making those things as a public disclosure, so that if you are looking at it from more from the financial angle or risk mitigation angle, you will be able to achieve that. So like if you go for a MSCI or DJSI rating for sustainability, even there will be helping you with that. And the fourth thing, which should be the starting point, that is the learning and scaling for the internal as well as external stakeholders. So we do provide the learning or training courses for your employees, for your board, or even for the external vendors, to get them onboarded in this bandwagon of ESG. So these are like the main 4 pillars. Now, along with our partners, it is like the overall like services we take care from end-to-end services, starting from the capacity building, which is like a training or getting the top management onboarded into this, then followed by the materiality assessment, which will account for the stakeholder engagement to coming out with the materiality assessments and orienting or concluding everything into those topics. Third thing will be a maturity analysis in terms of the sustainability practice and the data availability. Then comparing it with your peers to help you give an overview of where you are today as per the ESG performance, and even benchmarking it to the industry best practices. Finally, moving towards the goal setting and like improving those ESG parameters, so that we are also like taking care of the investment side, as well as our like communication strategy for our employees and our customers and the vendors. So all those things will be there, and the final thing will be a reporting part. So creating a report which is just for the compliance requirement, or even communicating all the initiatives and the work that we are doing in the ESG front. So overall end-to-end things will be taken care by us and our partner. So now, just giving you a brief overview of the services sphere. So we do align our practice along with all the frameworks which are globally available. So BRSR is one of them. Integrated reporting, as you all will be aware of it. But other than that, there are multiple such global reporting frameworks which are available. So we do help you with that. But at the same time, to ease out your work for the ESG front, we do have our consulting support guidance on the BRSR aspect, giving assurance services, then like starting from the policy formation, to help you with the stakeholder engagement, due diligence in the or reporting framework, then supply chain assessment for that if you want to include your vendors also into that. So all these things, like this life cycle assessment to the entire reporting part, we will be able to do it along with our partners. So right now, like we also have a digital solution which can ease out this process, so that the time consumed for reporting can be reduced drastically. So right now, as all of you would be aware, that for any report preparation, it takes somewhere around 4 months to 6 months to first of all collect the data, create an interim report, and then finalizing that report and publishing it, right? So for that, the initial part of collecting, measuring, reporting, and communicating, what we have done, we have created a digital solution which can like drastically reduce down the effort and the time required, and that can help you with a better visibility of the ESG practice in the company. So it can take different inputs from, like, if you don't have any automation, we can also enable automation. If you don't have that, even manual data can be fed. We also have the feed for external data, which will be related for the data modeling and ESG modeling, so that you get a real-time view of where you stand today compared to your peers and compared to a global landscape. Output will be a short sustainability report. And along with that, we will also help you with the strategy or the journey maps which needs to be created for a long-term vision, or if you are committing for a net zero target. So there is where we and our partners will come into picture. And training and communication is also one arm that we definitely are into. So here are our partners like Good Govern. They have a strong practice of like industry-wide known and matured professionals who are either in the like boards of the MNCs or even like bigger Indian corporates. So they are helping us more from the advisory part. Similarly, Ramanan and Shah and company, they are more into the assurance as well as helping us with the advisory part. And Incorp Advisory is also one partner who is having a presence in Southeast Asia. So we do have a global presence. We are also catering to clients in Europe and USA, and along with that Southeast Asia. So over on a global level, we all come together to give you this entire suite of service, from initial data collection to giving a short report. So this is where we stand today. So thank you for all your time and efforts. So now I would like to even have few questions which we received while you were registering for this webinar. So I'll just like to open the full forum for everyone to ask the questions also. But before that, I will just take up few questions which we have already received, and post that it will be an open forum for everyone to ask their doubts and questions. So if I may ask, Sai, can you just help us with the questions here which were already asked, and Vivek and me can go with the questions and answer those things.
Yeah, sure, Abhirup. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. The first question is, do you see BRSR replacing the existing non-financial disclosures? Also, do you see a new assurance standard coming up specifically for BRSR?
Okay. I'll take up this question, Abhirup. Thank you for the question. See, the question is in two parts. The first is whether BRSR is going to replace the existing frameworks for non-financial reporting. Now, SEBI in its circular dated 10th May 21, it has already said that if you are reporting on any other existing frameworks such as BRSR or TCFD or IR, you still have to publish your BRSR report, but you can interlink elements which have been published in your other framework sustainability report with the BRSR. So I would not say that it is going to replace or it has replaced it, but it is an additional report that a company has to publish by linking the BRSR elements and the questions with the existing already published non-financial report by a company. Secondly, whether a new assurance framework is coming or not. Now, I already answered that question. It's just a matter of time, because everything has to be assured when something is published in the public domain. It has to be externally assured. So assurance standards will come in due course, and external assurance will be made compulsory. This is what we anticipate. Everyone in the sustainability consulting, we are already anticipating this, and it's just a matter of time, like I said earlier. Sai, the next question, please.
Yeah. BRSR would bring more transparency and ESG-aligned structure to the reporting format, but how do organizations find the resources to arrive at this data?
See, regarding the data resources, Abhirup has already said that BRSR, or for that matter, any sustainability report framework, it is highly data intensive. It has to gather data all over the year round. For example, if you see principle number 6, the questions related to principle number 6 in the BRSR, lot of data related to groundwater, related to emissions, all those things has to be collected. Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 emissions, everything has to be collected. So it is a highly data-driven, rigorous exercise which has to be implemented from the day one of your reporting period. Plus, the BRSR also anticipates that you will give comparative information of the earlier reporting period. So as far as our advice goes to companies, we would like to say that if you are going to report for financial year 22-23, you start the implementation process as of now, so that we can have some comparable information in place. And from the 1st of April of 2022, which will be the beginning of the next financial year, the compulsory reporting period, we can have all the data gathered from the scratch from day one. It is a highly data intensive exercise, and we need measurements every day. For example, how much groundwater you have drawn, how much surface water you are using, how are the emissions and the effluents being treated on a daily basis, how much water is being recharged into your groundwater sources, how much water is being taken as a rainwater harvesting. It has to be on a daily basis measurement system. So it is a data intensive exercise, and solutions and calculations and everything has to go in place for that.
Yeah, we do also have other questions.
Yeah.
How can non-accounting background people get benefited from BRSR?
Okay. Now, to set the perspective for this question, BRSR or ESG implementation and reporting is going to benefit each and every person at large. Okay. Everyone, all the stakeholders. So it's not simply about accounting background and non-accounting background people who are going to benefit. Everyone is going to benefit at large. Now, having said that, this is a practice and this is a process which requires multi-functional domain level experts. You need financial experts, you need chartered accountants, you need environmental engineers, you need greenhouse gas experts, you need IT experts, you need emission experts, everything is needed. And we have built up a team which has all sorts of experts in legal aspects, the HR aspects, everything has to be taken care of, like I said. So not only non-accounting, but everyone has to be involved in the process at some point of the time or the other. And everyone will be benefited because the process of implementation itself is highly enriching academically, theoretically, practically, and from the welfare point of view. It is very important, very enriching, and it's going to be a very, very fruitful exercise. This is the step in the right direction, I would say. Everyone is going to be benefited at large. The society at large is also going to be benefited in due course.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. And we do also have a few more questions in the chat window. So
Okay.
Can you please elaborate more on BRSR lite?
Abhirup, would you like to take up this question?
Yes, Vivek. Thank you. So to talk about the overall aspect of BRSR Lite. So BRSR Lite is nothing but like the framework that we have for BRSR. It has been trimmed down to again even reduced down from the essential indicators, and it is something that any company can adopt who are not mandated by SEBI right now. So it will be like similar lines on the BRSR thing, so that everyone can align their thoughts, and they get a ready-made framework which they can adopt to. So BRSR Lite is already like a published framework that is there from SEBI. So any company can start off with few points in the initial years, and then moving forward they can include more and more details into the reporting, so that when there is a business responsibility index coming up, at that time, even if you are not under the mandate of reporting BRSR, you will be able to evaluate that while a company in the similar sector or similar industry, while they are listed and they have a market cap of that much amount, how you are performing on those ESG space. And that can be one differentiator that you can create for your company or your startup, because that will be like one talking point. Because right now, if you see even the startups like Zomato or Licious, they are also moving towards this ESG framework. Recently, Licious and Zomato, they have started orienting their goals. You can see that on the Zomato app, you see climate conscious deliveries. So they are using this as a differentiator from the market, and they are using this as a brand communication, as a like overall objective of the company. And they are also taking so many steps onto that, like converting their entire fleet into a renewable energy based source like an EV, and even reducing down their emissions because of the climate mitigation steps and all. So overall, every company will have different orientation and different goals. So based on that, you can take care of this, and to ease that out, BRSR Lite is the readily available framework by SEBI, which can help you with the initial guidance. Because otherwise, if you go with other frameworks, it might be confusing, and it might give you like it might end up that you will have to go for multiple reportings to evaluate that where you stand today. So rather than that, it is better to go with the BRSR Lite, so that you will be able to benchmark yourself, and you will be also quantifying your efforts on the ESG or sustainability space.
Yeah, one more question, Abhirup. Is separate ESG policy is required, or like EHS policy may use as it is?
So I would like to say that it is an extension to the discussion that we are having, like the first question that Vivek answered, that how is ESG different from CSR. So similar-ish, how ESG is different from EHS. So to answer this question, employee health and safety or environmental health and safety covers about the like practices of the company, which is applicable for their internal stakeholders like the employees and the contract employees, and even the it can also percolate down to the vendors or the supply chain partners. But at the same time, ESG is not limited to only these two stakeholder groups. It has to incorporate the stakeholders like their investors, their consumers, their shareholders, and everyone. So ESG policy is not going to be only about environmental health and safety practices. It has to be much more than that. There has to be a goal orientation towards this. You will have to incorporate climate risks. You will have to incorporate governance risks. You will have to incorporate this social risks. So if I have to give an overview, employee health and safety practice EHS policies will be only covering the social aspect, and that to limited to some extent, whereas ESG as a policy will be much larger in terms of the scope. So that's why like it will be a subset of ESG policy, not the other way around.
Yeah, one more question, Abhirup.
Yes.
Should we have separate supplier sustainability guidelines or ESG policy and code of conduct, especially like communicated to the critical suppliers tier 1 and 2 is sufficient?
So right now, if you look at it, I would like to answer this more from the coverage angle. So like if we see that if you include your vendors or supply chain partners in your sustainability reporting as a stakeholder, you will definitely need to have that group included as per your company's binding policies and SOPs, because that is where the ESG framework comes into picture. So, like if I have to break it down into first principles, the ESG framework wants to know or wants companies to disclose that, let's say you as a company is operating today uh, along with all your partners, because they are responsible for your business output, correct? So in a way they are helping you to grow in your business. So in that sense, you are also responsible for giving or guiding them through those ESG adoption, because right now you will be consuming services and like you will be getting the raw materials or the products from these small vendors, which will then combine towards a finished product or a service by a company. So that is where inclusion of all these parties as a vendors is much more important today. So it can be a phase wise manner. So you can include your tier 1 vendors for now or for the first few years, because it will take time for them to also adopt, because there will be like management of change practices for them also. There are so many things which will be new for them to account and report, because that will ultimately percolate like boil down to your reporting framework of ESG. And now talking about this from the emissions angle, like there are three categories that are there in the emissions: scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. So scope 1 and scope 2 is something which is within the boundaries of the organization. So whatever we have as our legal assets, whatever energy consumption that we have in our assets or our books will be accounted into scope 1 and scope 2, whereas scope 3 is completely dependent on the supply chain and the vendors that we engage with on a day-to-day basis. So if I have to give you a rough idea of the scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3 emissions of any company, it would be somewhere around 30% of the entire scope of any company will be only in scope 1 and scope 2, but somewhere around 70 to 90% of the scope emissions of any company will come from their supply chain. So that is where it is much more critical for any company to have these vendors or the supply chain included into this. So that is where like all the world is moving towards including the entire supply chain into their reporting practice.
Abhiru, can I have a small, addition to what you already said?
Definitely.
In context of this question, see, we have seen large corporations having a lot of subsidiaries as companies as subsidiaries in to have a backward integration in place. Okay. So basically, there is a concept of reporting boundary over here in a sustainability report or even in the BRSR. So when you say that we want to include suppliers, tier 1 suppliers or tier 2 suppliers, so first it depends on the reporting boundary that a company has built for sustainability reporting. Secondly, in today's world, unlike in the past, your supply chain partners and your backward integration partners are internal risks. They are internalities, they are not externalities. Okay. Earlier, they were considered as separate. Their ESG risks, their sustainability risks, which are percolating on the reporting entity, they were considered to be externalities. Now they are all considered as internalities, and that is why companies nowadays have started including their supply chain partners as a part of the reporting process and have started extending applicable ESG policies to their suppliers also. We have in our course of practice seen so many large corporates telling their suppliers that you have to adopt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 policies in your processes. You have to have a business recovery plan, a business continuity plan, for example. So when an FMCG company, for example, it procures a packaging material from already printed packaging material from another supplier, an outsourced manufacturing company, it will ask that manufacturing company to adhere to certain practices which it itself has adopted. So this is the whole situation as it is evolving right now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Abhirup, for answering all these questions. And if you have any more questions, please drop us a mail. We'll get back to you with the answers. Thank you, sir.
So we are already on time, to finish up the webinar. I hope that we were able to answer the questions that you have already communicated to us, and like whatever you have written in the chat box. So for now, as like the next steps, that we are also interacting with more and more companies. So we do feel that there are companies who are right now evaluating that what would be the strategy for next year and how they want to start the reporting for BRSR. So for that, what we have done, we have also come up with kind of a small assessment where it will be measuring the overall readiness for your BRSR reporting. So for that, if any one of you want to do it for your organization, so feel free to drop us an email or schedule a call with us, so that we can help you with the initial evaluation, that where you stand today and how those things can be taken forward, so that you are ready from April 1st, that for reporting what are the gaps that we have on the reporting data collection point of view and from the policy point of view, and that can give you a better headway to plan out the entire process for next year. So with that, I would like to end the discussion, and feel free to reach out to us. We'll definitely share our contact details on the chat, and you already have our website there. So feel free to reach out to us for any further questions or any things that you need from us. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Yes, have a great weekend.
Same to you.